Hey guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I am in Las Vegas with Blackjack Apprenticeship member Overtime. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So, how long have you been a member of Blackjack Apprenticeship?
About 3 years now.
Cool. And have you made any money with Blackjack or no?
I've made a few dollars.
Nice. Well, then this is going to be fun. So, for those who don't know, on our forum, someone actually just kind of did a shout out and asked me to interview Overtime, and I said, yeah, I'd love to. So this is the first chance we've gotten to be in the same room or same state since then. And so we're going to get to hear Overtime's story. And let's start at the beginning. How did you first hear about and get interested in Blackjack?
Well, it all started with the movie 21. And when the movie 21 came out, I wasn't quite 18. And the casinos in my area were 18 and up. But a couple years later, this was around 2009, 2010. I turned 18, and that was the first time I joined BJA. And my friends and I joined for about a month, and that's where I learned basic strategy and really got into counting cards and learned the running count. Kind of knew a few deviations. I know I didn't have a winning game. I didn't keep any records, and I never went to a casino to count cards back then. But anytime we went, I would attempt to count cards. But basically, for the next 7 years, I don't even consider the original, I don't consider that part of my career up until about the last 3 years when I kind of got back into it.
Okay, so you're 17, 21, the movie comes out.
Yep.
You see it with some buddies.
Yep.
And you're like, let's do this.
That's right.
So you do a little Google search or something.
Yeah, and I think we found your YouTube videos back then, the mistakes, and kind of led to the website. I don't know if I saw the documentary, but I've always been obsessed. Like whenever I find something that I like to do, or I just usually obsess over it until I master it. If it started with video games, and I got into poker, and it's ham radio or the Rubik's Cube, and now it's blackjack. So
nice.
Whatever I find, I just go all in.
What's been more profitable, ham radio or blackjack?
Definitely blackjack, not ham radio. Ham radio costs money, but. And if an apocalypse happens, then ham radio will be very beneficial.
There you go. So, so you guys you and your buddies pool you were telling me before, you pooled your $29.
Yeah, we each threw in $10. Back then you could do month-to-month memberships, and we watched all the videos and trained for a month, and then I emailed Colin, and I don't even think I still have that email address, and told him I didn't have any more money and we had to cancel the membership.
And that's basically why we don't do monthly anymore, is because if someone doesn't have the money for more than 1 month of a membership, they really probably should not be getting into card counting.
That's funny.
So you guys like binge watch the videos and then,
yep.
But you didn't go to the casinos then?
No, we did. And I went, and I don't even know what my spread was or if I had one. I think when I did my true count conversion, if the cards were behind the cut card, if it was a 6 deck and there's 1 deck cut off, I think I only divided by 5.
Oh, wow.
This was 10 years ago. And like I said, I wasn't a winning card counter. That's just kind of when I got intrigued by it, I guess, and I first learned about it.
And then you put it on the back burner, through college?
Yeah, through college. I finished college. I was very busy, and then I got a job and moved states. And then one of my first projects for my jobs I got put on was building a hotel addition to a casino, and this is when it all really started again.
Okay, so you probably, without 21 the movie and that 1 month membership, you probably would have gotten that job at the casino and just never thought about it.
Yeah,
or gambled for fun or something.
Right? Yeah, probably just would have gambled for fun. I don't know, but I'm glad I found card counting.
So then what happened? Your company gets the hotel job.
Yep. So we start construction, and for the first 2 months of the job, I'm like, I'm not even going to go into the casino. I'm going to stay out. I'm not going to burn any money. And then slowly it started sucking me in. And the job was 1 hour away from my house. So I was driving 1 hour there and 1 hour home on the interstate every day. And so I had a lot of downtime. And so I decided to start counting cards again. Then I joined BJA, and I started listening to the podcasts to and from work. And there was 3 years ago, I don't know, there was 5 or 10 podcasts maybe. And I just listened to them over and over and over and over and over. I was listening to 10 hours a week. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just the same podcast.
Just the same podcast. And then I discovered Gambling with an Edge.
Oh, nice. There you go.
And they had over 300 episodes.
Oh, wow.
I started at the beginning. You can find them on bobdancer.com. I started at the beginning and just listened to every single one of them on my 1 hour to and 1 hour home from work every day.
So that took you, 6 months or something?
Yeah, it didn't take long. It really didn't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what happened with Blackjack?
So with Blackjack, I started going in the casino. I took out $200. I didn't have a bankroll. I didn't have money set aside for Blackjack. I just took $200 in there and never looked back.
So, but you trained before?
Oh yes, yeah. So I still knew basic strategy. Every time before then, I'd gone to the casino and I knew we were going to play Blackjack. I reviewed the basic strategy chart, and so yes. The other thing was I listened. I'd watched all the training videos, but I would listen to them on my way to work.
Okay.
And so I listened to all of the videos. I would have them like on my phone ready to go, and I could just hit next and listen to them.
And so, well, that gives you the information, right?
Right.
Like the videos will give you the information, and you knew basic strategy, but did you practice counting it while doing basic strategy at the same time at home? Or?
Yes, I did. So at work, I had a deck of cards on my desk, and throughout the day, I would count down a deck, and I got down to where I was under 30 seconds every time, and then 25, and then I was 20 seconds, 18, 19. I'd studied the deviation charts. I'd fill out like 2 blank basic strategy charts a day, and the whole time I'm training, I'm also playing. And I was getting, I guess you could say, lucky in the beginning because I never went below the initial $200 that I started with.
With what kind of betting?
So I honestly don't remember, but I don't think I was betting over $25. It was like a $5 table, like one hand.
But even then, $25, that's 8 units. That's eight bets.
Like in my first 2 weeks, I made like $2,000, and then I got up to almost $3,000, and then I went on a $1,500 losing streak, and I dropped down to around $1,500, and I almost quit.
Yeah, so you're having the normal swings of overbetting your bankroll. You know, fortunately, like me, you had the positive first.
Yeah, I almost quit, and I was like, "Oh, I'm up this much." I said, "I'll just keep going." If I lose it all, then I'm done.
Dude, you should have quit. Think of how much time you would have saved over the years.
I'm glad I did not.
Okay, so back to the training. You said you could count down a deck in under 20 seconds. Right. You knew basic strategy, and then you're playing. Basically, your training is at the tables.
Yes, I became so obsessed with it. I would wake up at 3 a.m. and leave at 3:30, and I would or sooner, and I would get to the casino around 4 or 4:30 every morning, 5 nights a week.
Wow!
So I could play before work. Because I was working right outside, so all I had to do, and then I would go in on my lunch break and play a shoe, and then I would go in after work and play for 2 or 3 hours. And my fiance at the time, now she's my wife, she didn't understand it.
Yeah, that's pretty obsessive.
Yes,
I mean, I feel like I know that feeling though.
Yes.
It's so exciting.
It was,
and not exciting like a gambler where you're getting this like gambler's high, but exciting of, hey, I'm growing this thing. Yeah. Every shoe I play is positive EV.
Yes, and I was playing, 20 hours a week, and my bankroll was growing with, I could see it grow, and I had my glove box locked in my truck, and I'd keep my bankroll in there, and I would just like every day I'd, keep records, and I was watching it grow, and I just couldn't get enough.
So it goes up to about $3,000, and then down to 1,500, and you're thinking of calling it quits, and
then I just immediately started winning again, and I got up to 3,000 or 3,500, somewhere in there, and that's when I got a customized bet spread from you.
Okay,
and it was 1 hand of 5 to 2 by 30. I believe on the
still probably a little bit.
six deck, that was 5% risk.
Okay, yeah.
And then on the double deck, it was 1 hand of 10 to 2 by 50, but aggressively wonging out, and that was also about 5% risk.
Okay.
But you said as soon as you double your bankroll or as soon as you get to 5,000, you said it would be 2% risk.
Yeah.
And it didn't take me but another couple of weeks, and I was at 5,000. And then I held that bet spread 1 by 5 to 2 by 30 until I got CVCX, and that was around $7,000, and that's after I met Levi Mitch, which is a whole different story.
Okay, so you just kind of ground it out at 5% risk. It's kind of like higher than I prefer, but man, I've been there. We played at 5% for a long time because we didn't really. It felt 5% sounds so small.
Yeah, I would never do that now.
I'm sure I gave you that bet spread because there wasn't really a way to get positive EV with much lower.
Right. We went back and forth, and you're like, hey, and you told me, you're like, hey, it's high. If you make it to 5K, then you'll be 2% risk, and I made it there.
Yeah.
And so I held that 2%, and then once I started networking and learning more, also in this time I went on the forum. I went all the way back to the very first page, and I skimmed every forum post, and if I saw something that I was like, oh, I have that question, or I didn't think to ask that question, then I would read the post. And I did that early on as well. And I was a sponge and I read a bunch of books and tried to absorb as much information as I could on my own. And then I got to the point where I was like, I needed to meet somebody. Like I need to, I don't know what I don't know. And that's when I got to go to Vegas for the first time.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
So I was actually playing in a casino after work, and I was around $7,000 at this point. I think I was about 4 months in. And I got an email from my boss saying, hey, do you want to go to Vegas for this expo for, construction? I said, well, sure, I want to go. And so the next week I was on my way it was a couple weeks later, I was on my way to Vegas, but I had posted on the forum, hey, I'll be in Vegas these dates. I'm looking to network, blah, blah, blah. And by that point, it was like 2 pages, 3 pages back on the forum, and nobody had responded. But the night before my flight left, somebody messaged me, and it was Levi Mitch, and he said, hey, I'll be in town, here's my number, message me when you land. So I did. And the first day, I went and did all the expo stuff, but that night I had the opportunity to meet Levi Mitch at the hotel. And
he didn't mug you and take your bankroll?
He did not. I was willing to risk my entire bankroll just to meet an AP. Wow, yeah. I was so desperate to network, and I probably would have gotten mugged, but he didn't mug me. I could probably take him in a fight anyways. Don't tell him I said that. But no, so I met him, and he said, hey, I'm Levi Mitch. He goes, have you ever been dealt to before? I said, no. She said, okay, come on. So I followed him up to his hotel room, and I walked in, and he was staying in a suite. He had been in Vegas for like 17 days, I think, and he had $5,000 or $6,000 in casino chips that we were using, and he was dealing to me. He started dealing double deck and dealt 4 or 5 shoes, and then he dealt a couple 6-deck shoes, and he goes, hey, you have a pretty good game. He goes, I've never dealt to somebody having their first time being dealt to do so well. I was, I think the biggest thing I needed to work on was my deck estimation, but as far as the running count, true count, or the true count and the deviations, I was pretty good at that point. But the biggest thing was that night I went around with him and watched him play, and that's, I think, what I was missing is like, how does an AP handle himself at the table, like all the nuances and the stuff that's it's hard to teach somebody, but it's just stuff you pick up on as you play, or if you have the opportunity to watch a professional play. It's really something.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you had the important, I don't want to say deck estimation isn't important, but it's not like if you're off by a quarter deck, you're right. Like a losing player. Whereas if you're off on the running count by a bit, you're a losing player. Off on your basic strategy, you're losing. So you had the important things down. Yeah. How many hours did you play at that point?
So I was probably around 100 or 150 because I played 250 before I joined the team, and I was at 7K, and I was so it's probably around 100 or 150 hours. Okay. And this was in, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. I can't remember.
Wow. Yeah. So you're getting in about 40 hours a month of. Yeah. And which, that sounds, that's reasonable. 10 hours a week. So you watch him play a bit, and then what happened? Right.
Yeah. We went around, and he was, playing $25 tables and, betting up to $200 or $300, I think, at that time. And we went around, and then we actually went to the Stratosphere and rode roller coasters, and he showed me all the fun stuff to do in Vegas. Yeah. And he was trying to take me hiking and everything. I said, hey, listen, this is my first time in Vegas. I said, I want to play blackjack.
Yeah.
So I said the next night we went to some of the local casinos that had some $5 double deck tables, and he ran some sims for me on CVCX at my new bankroll, and we were able to tailor in some bet spreads, and that's kind of when I learned more about CVCX. And it was a fun trip. I was only there for a couple days, and then I had to leave and go back home.
Cool. For those who don't know, CVCX is betting software made by QFit, Norm Wattenberger, and it's Windows-based, and it's great. It can do a lot of powerful things. And now we have our Blackjack Apprenticeship Pro betting software if you don't want to use Windows-based betting software. But QFit's great. It can do a lot of powerful things. So in case people are like, what is this mysterious CVCX he keeps referring to?
I use the pro betting software now. It's super easy if you're in the casino and you're not sure 100% what the conditions are going to be, or conditions change. You can run to the bathroom and whip out a new spread or check something, and it's super handy.
And this podcast is brought to you by Blackjack Apprenticeship Pro Betting Software. Okay, so you guys play. He gets you some double deck bet spreads.
Yep.
And
we go out, just some of the local casinos, and I got to play, and I don't think he watched me play, but he played at other tables, and we just kind of hung out for a couple of days, and I guess became friends.
Yeah.
I went back home, and a couple weeks later, he was leaving Vegas, but driving within an hour where I lived, so he ended up staying with me for almost a week, and we kind of went around to some of my local shops. And I had to convince my wife to let a stranger stay at her house on the first night. But after she met him, no, it wasn't an issue. But so we went around some of my local casinos, and I watched him play there. I didn't hardly play, and that's when I got put into OSN by association.
By association,
I was the getaway driver.
Oh man, that's the worst.
Yeah, so $7,000 into my career, I'm in OSN.
Yeah, and not even because of your play.
And so he got backed off at one of my local casinos, and we went to the casino that I was building the hotel at. And as soon as he walked in, they trespassed him, but they let me play.
Uh-huh.
And Monday, one of the pit bosses talked to me and said, "Hey, who was your friend last week?" And I said, "Well, I just met him online. I don't really know him." And he goes, "Okay." He goes, "Well, I want you to know we're not done. We know what you're doing." And I said, "I know. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me play." He goes, "Okay, you're welcome. Just I want you to know."
Yeah.
So and they let me play another 100 hours there.
Nice.
Yeah, and they knew I was counting.
For another 100 hours.
Yeah, I think they knew. I don't know how long they knew, but they knew a long time.
Yeah. And then what happened after that 100 hours?
Well, after I joined the team, which is a few months down the line, I started betting more.
Okay, so let's backtrack.
Yeah,
you're in OSN.
Yep.
Your career's over. No,
yep,
just kidding. And what transpired next?
So Levi Mitch, we hung out for about a week, and then I became friends, and then he went back home, and I was trying to he says I asked to be on his team. I don't think I did. I don't remember asking, but I was trying. At this point, I'm like, man, I want to get on a team. That's the way to go. It's what everybody does. And so I just kept playing on my own another 100 hours, and I made another 5,000. I got up to about 12,500 before I ended up joining the team. But I had to get dealt to by Spartan first.
Uh-huh.
And that was the most nerve-wracking
really?
experience, I think, because it was the first time I met him. He had flew to the Midwest, and I drove 4 hours to meet him. And then I met him in the hotel room, and then he dealt me 10 double-deck shoes and 10 six-deck shoes. And I had to, count down a deck, and, was only allowed so many mistakes. And I was very nervous, but I passed.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I went out and started playing.
And just went back to where you had been playing.
Yeah. So I went back to the casino that I was working on, and I lasted 2 weeks betting tablemen to table matches.
So they already told you, we know what you're doing here.
Yeah.
and you'd been betting at that point. What were you betting?
So I started 1x5 to 2x30, and so when I got up to 12,000, I was maxing out at $100 on the double deck, 1x10 to 2x100.
Okay.
On the double deck.
That's a pretty healthy bet spread.
Yeah. So,
but
I was wonging out of negatives.
Yeah.
So
and they knew what you were doing, but you weren't. It wasn't like we're going to pull the plug on you.
Not yet.
And then all of a sudden you're going from.
I was betting 1x10. The table max on the double deck was 250.
Okay, so 1x10 to 2x250.
Yeah, on the one they had open during the day. They didn't open the $25 table until the weekends. But in those 2 weeks I didn't have a chance to go play on a weekend. But then I got backed off 2 weeks later, and they were polite about it. They're like, "Hey, overtime, can we talk to you?" And it was the table game manager. So I said, "Oh, sure." He said, "Hey, we noticed you've been betting a lot more lately." He goes, "What's going on?" And I just said, "I just got more money."
Yeah.
And he said, "Okay, well, no more blackjack."
Okay.
And I shook his hand and said, "Thank you." And so on and so forth. And that was it at that casino.
Was it awkward at all, them working?
It kind of was after that, because I would get to go into the back of house sometimes, and I would see the dealers like standing outside the break room, or have to go through the security checkpoints, to get back there, and see pit bosses and everything kind of in the back. And, I'll never be able to play there ever again, even if I try to play unrated, just because I'd be instantly recognized.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even go there for other advantage plays that aren't blackjack related. If I get closer than 2 banks of slots to the tables, they notice me. And they're like, "Hey, overtime," and I'm like,
"Yeah." Well, I guess maybe it's a little awkward, but at the same time, why should it be awkward for her? It's probably maybe they're judging you. They're like, "Oh, this guy was was trying to beat us." But man, what's wrong with just playing a winning, trying to play a winning game in there?
Hey, and on the team, we got paid by the hour, a percentage of the EV that we generated, and this whole spreadsheet. So I'm like, well, the less EV I generate, the smaller piece of the pie I'm going to get when we break a bankroll. So I didn't want to
keep going up to 2 by 100.
It wouldn't have been worth it, because I would have only be getting a portion. Like, I could have bet that on my own bankroll.
Yeah,
if I'm on the team, I need to utilize the bankroll to make it worth it, or else I'm making less than I was on my own if I'm only betting up to 2 by 100.
Which is actually a really valid thing. So that's interesting you brought that up, because a lot of people they'll say, "Hey, I want to join a team, or I want to have this person bankroll me, and then I'll have a much bigger bankroll." But if you have a bigger bankroll, but you're only keeping a portion of it, then you very well could be better off financially on your own. Which I've said this before, but joining a team isn't always the best move simply to make more money, or rarely is it the best move just to make more money. Lots of times it's more for the camaraderie, which sounds like you were really hungry for, which
exactly
I get.
I needed, I guess people, or a team, or a network, and that's what it was. And I mean, I had a $12,000 bankroll, and I could have kept growing it on my own, but like, joining the team, it just leapfrogged me, I don't know, exponentially, in not just like blackjack, but like other advantage plays and networking. It's like, now when I went somewhere to play, it's like, "Hey, Spartan, hey, Levi, Mitch, they've already played there," or they know people that have, and it's like, "Hey, avoid this casino, or play this casino, but not that one. Hey, you can play this one rated, but don't play that one because they'll flyer you. This one won't flyer you." If you have that intel, you can effectively and efficiently get as much EV out of an area as possible. Because if you don't know that, and you go to the casino with the best game that's the sweatiest, and you last 10 minutes, but now you're flyered to every other casino, and you get backed off before you even sit down, then,
And you can have a network without being a part of a team, but, there's still just friends might not tell you certain things that people will if they've got financial interest.
I agree. I've been on my own now for a year since the team kind of broke up, and we can talk more about that later. But I would tell people, like, I'd prefer to play on my own now that I have the bankroll to bet how I'm betting and make the EV that I'm making. But I would tell people to network like you're on a team, but
and that means giving too. Giving, not just trying to get information, but giving information.
And that's tough early on, because joining a team for me was very beneficial early on, because then I know what to look for and what's valuable. And then I can go out and look for that stuff on my own. But before, I didn't know what I was looking for. Like, I didn't know what was valuable information. But now I do, and I can get that, and now I can share it with my friends, my old teammates.
So the first casino ends. You're now on the team. What'd you do? Hit the road, or?
My first session I played on the team, I lost $6,000, and I was scared, and I thought that they were going to think I stole it. Spartan and Levi are like, "Hey, it's fine. It's just part of the game." I'm like, okay, because that was half my bankroll when I was on my own, and I'd never bet that much or lost that much, and I was excited to be on the team, and I was like, "Hey, let's just start winning. I've been winning. Let's keep it going." And then I lose what would have been half my bankroll on my own, and I was just freaking out.
No, I remember apologizing to Ben the first time we chopped. We went out and just played for a couple hours, and he won money and I lost. I'm like, "I'm sorry, you don't need to give me your money, but that's just he got it and I didn't yet." So they got it, Spartan and Levi Mitch. And so then you hit the road, or?
So I still had my normal job. So And so right when I started counting cards is when I proposed to my wife. Like the Saturday before I proposed, and then that Monday I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start counting cards again.
Yeah.
So she got to ride the whole thing with me. But so no, I still had work, and we were working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. It just kind of depended on the schedule.
And you're planning a wedding and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then we started planning a wedding. But I was still probably playing 10 or 15 hours a week. I had several other local casinos I hadn't been backed off yet. And then I was driving, once a week I was driving 3.5 hours to a casino that I ended up taking almost $90,000 from over 112 hours because they were just letting me play their double deck up to 2x500. And that was because other APs have done, I guess, what I've done there, but I think I lasted the longest.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know why.
And was there like elaborate cover you were using?
No. So this place is known for giving good free bets. And so I was collecting about $6,000 a month in free bets that I was cashing in. So when I first went in there, and I knew this going in, I knew I was going to go in and play rated just from the intel I had and what I was, kind of told about. And I went in, and the first time I played, I was kind of playing a white rabbit spread from -1 to 1. I was betting 100. At a 2, I was betting 200 or 300, and then at a 3, I was betting 500, I think. And then at if I was heads up, -2 and lower, I was betting 1x25 or 2x50. It was double deck. If you dropped a hand, you couldn't re-add it.
So you're using kind of a tighter bet spread.
It was a tighter spread.
It's a little bit of betting cover, basically.
Yes. And then after I played there for 2 or 3 trips, I'm like, if they're going to evaluate, or if they were going to evaluate me, I feel like they would have already done it. So I didn't bet any more, but I bet more aggressively, 2x50 to 2x500. And then they just never backed me off.
Well, they did eventually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But $90,000 later?
$112, yeah, and $40,000 I collected from the free bets that I used to pay for the wedding. And
so wait, I thought you said 90,000.
I had 90,000 from Blackjack.
Oh, okay.
And then I collected an additional almost $40,000 from all the free bets.
So at this one casino,
from one
130K?
Yes.
Okay.
Total.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. I was driving up there once a week because I don't want to give away too much because some people know what I'm talking about, but they would give you 3 free bets, and they had like one that was available from these days, and then one was available this day, and one was available these days. Well, 2 of them overlapped, and the other one was one day apart. So you could drive up, do the 1 free bet, and then at 12:01 a.m. you could do the other 2 free bets. And this was during the week, so I would leave my job at 5 or 6 o'clock, drive 4 hours, get there at 10, check into my free hotel room, get an hour of sleep, do the free bets, and then I'd have to leave by 2 in the morning to get back to my job. So I'd get like 1 or 2 hours of sleep, and I did this for months, every week.
Oh, man.
But I was making $6,000 a month.
Yeah.
And that's when my wife kind of clicked. I said, she was kind of annoyed at first. I said, listen, I was trying to explain it to her. But then once I was showing her, like, hey, this is like money we're going to use to pay for the wedding. She goes, whoa. And that's when she kind of got it. Because before she's like, I just don't want to hear you talk about Blackjack anymore. That's all you talk about. But then once this started happening,
that's a really good.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. When you tie the money to a goal, a worthwhile goal, it makes it worthwhile. And I mean, gosh, that's a philosophy in general. Money in and of itself it really doesn't have a purpose.
Yeah.
But money that furthers a worthwhile goal is worth the 1 or 2 hours sleep.
Yeah. You've got to have a why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing?
Exactly.
Like, if you don't have a goal or a why, like short term and long term, then I don't know. You just don't. I guess you don't have a purpose. But
I agree.
Talk about the why.
Yeah. So you're making, $6,000. Was that just from $6,000 a month? Was that from the free plays?
Yep. Well, I had to drive up there once a week, and I'd pick up $1,500.
Yeah. And then how long did this take to win the 130K?
It was over 112 hours, and it was, I think, over the span of 8 months.
Okay. Yeah.
At this one casino that I was driving up. So.
And that was probably the majority or all of your blackjack play for that stretch.
Yeah, at that time. There was another local casino that was down the road from the one that we were working on, and that's the one I can still play at now 3 years later. But
don't tell him, anybody.
Oh, yeah, seriously, no. But we can talk more about that later. But yeah, but the majority of it was driving up to this other casino.
Okay.
But I actually wasn't playing a lot of blackjack there when I went to go pick up my free bets.
Sure.
Because I didn't want to kill my ADT, your average daily theoretical.
Yeah.
Because I was giving them so much play, or I would give them so much play, like during one day. I don't think this is any trade secret, but they base the comps they give you based off your hours played, how much your average bet is, and then sometimes they rate you of how good of a basic strategy player you are, and that might affect how much they're expecting to make off of you. But then they give you a percentage of that back. But the more you do it, the higher your average daily theoretical loss is, the better your comps, I guess, are going to be, or the better your free bets and free play. So I didn't want to go in and play, because that can cut your stuff in half, or because now instead of 1 day of play, you have a second day added to that. And instead of generating or playing for 10 hours, you play for 1 hour. Now instead of 10 hours worth of ADT, you have 11 divided by 2.
Okay, so you would just play like a long session.
Right, every once in a while.
Yeah.
To keep the free bets coming.
Interesting.
But at this place, I ended up over doubled my EV there. At this place,
your EV or your
on my blackjack, my AV was double my EV.
Oh,
by the time I was done, I only had 2.
Wow!
And the 8 months,
so you were just like positive variance through the roof.
I had my biggest winning session there, which was $17,000. I was betting 2x5, and I almost quit at 10,000. But I was like, I've only played for 3 hours, and I get paid by the hour. Why would I stop? So I kept playing and won another 7. And sometimes I would go in just to pick up free bets, and I started like getting to really know the pit bosses. And this one, I was like, "Hey, can you not like swipe my card in? I don't, And she goes, "Oh, just doing a drive by." I think she kind of knew what I was doing, but they didn't care. Or I would be really tired, and I'm like, "Hey, I wouldn't be mad if you forgot to log me out of the table for a few hours to make it look like I was still playing in the system, just to generate, more, I guess, points and stuff."
So is that the most you've taken out of one casino?
Yes, with the free bets and the blackjack. I've had this other casino I've been playing at. It's really local to me. I'm at about 65,000, but I can still play there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the most.
Well, let's get that one to at least 140,000.
Yeah, we'll
total money taken.
I already made them shut down their one double deck game because it, quote unquote, wasn't making any money.
I wonder why.
Yeah. One of the last days I was playing there, the table games manager came through, and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "Not good." I said, "What's wrong?" He goes, "It was, the beginning of the month." And he's like, "I just had to send a report to my boss as to why this table lost money again."
Oh,
and he goes, "I just had one sentence overtime." And he said my name. And then he walks over to the computer. He goes, "Yeah, you've been playing here for 8 months and you haven't had a losing month yet."
You're like,
I said, yeah, I'm just getting lucky. Yeah, and I can still, And so there's no more double deck there. Sorry, guys, it was a good game. But so now I can play the 6 deck, and they'll raise the limits enough to make it worth it. So
he was saying you hadn't had a losing session?
A losing month.
A losing month?
Yeah.
Oh, and you're like, fascinating.
Weird. I didn't know. I said, "I think I'm down." He goes, "No, you're way up."
Wow.
And I was. Because when I first started playing there, they'd let me bet 2x500, and in my first couple sessions, I lost $20,000 combined. And it's a small casino. I mean, it probably takes them like 2 or 3 months to generate that much in $5 and $10 bets.
Yeah,
because they're never that busy.
Wow. So, but they've got pretty good records then.
I was almost always heads up, and I was the only one betting that much. And this place they didn't stock $500 chips there until I started playing there. And so I would clear the rack out.
Yeah.
I've done it several times, and then we'd have to sit and wait till they got a fill because they didn't have enough to cover my bets. And
which is a great feeling.
Yeah, I've got some good pictures of that, and I had one just happen recently on the 6 deck. But so I started losing there, and they just loved it because they're like, "Oh man, we just made $20,000 off this guy." Well, then 2 weeks later, it swung the other direction, and I was up 20,000, and that is when they're like, "Hey, we can only let you go to 300," and then they capped my bets at 300, and for a while, and then eventually they're like, "Okay, you can go to 500 again," and then 300, and then they capped me at 300, and then 200, and then the table slowly died.
Man.
Yeah. So,
but they're still letting you play
still
the
letting me
shoe,
play. Yep.
the shoe game.
Not worth as much, but
Worth more than not playing.
Still worth more than not playing. And yeah, especially now that I'm starting to have to travel more because it's the only close spot, and they wouldn't go up to 2x300 until recently. So,
and has this place all been playing solo again, or did you?
No. So I played it all last year. Was on the team, and the year before that, I don't think I played it solo before the team, but this whole year I've played probably 50 or 60 hours or there at this place. I think I'm at like 300 hours this year.
So, talk a little bit. Actually, no. Let's talk a little bit more about on the team.
Okay.
So we were talking before about something that you guys found in another country.
Oh yes, I won't say where, but my wife and I got married, and I planned so we could have flown cheaper out of an airport an hour and a half from us, or about the same price, but this airport 3.5 hours from us, we drove by the casino that I could pick up my free
Yeah,
tickets.
there you go. That's what basically pay for the flight.
So I'm like, hey, we're going to fly out of here. I know it's further, but on the way there, I can pick up this much money. And when we land, I can pick up this much money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Of course, you have to.
Yeah. And so I talked her into that. And then I'm on the team. I think cash-wise, I was taking money in case I wanted to play or found something, and I'm glad I did. But I took, I think, about $40,000.
Wow!
And I had researched, how to declare and filled out the fence in and printed everything off. And so I even tried to call the airport before just to like make sure I was going to do everything right. Well, I got to the airport and I'm like, everywhere I went, got our boarding passes. Hey, where do I declare? Got to TSA. Hey, where do I declare? I need to declare. Where's, customs? They're like, oh, it's in here. So then we got in the gate. Well, customs wasn't inside the terminal. Then I got up to the flight and they're like, oh, you do it at the next place. And I got to the next place. And I'm like, hey, I need to declare, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, you do it when you get to the place. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's it, and that's not where you do it. You do it in the U.S. And so I got there and we had gone through we were in the country. We went through the last thing, I could see the daylight out of the doors. And I walked up to this guy. I'm like, hey, I need to declare. I didn't want to do anything wrong.
Yeah.
I said, I need to declare. And he goes, how much? I'm like, $40,000. He goes, come with me. And he was a corporal in their military. They don't have a police. It's more of a militarized police. And so they took my wife and I down this dark gray hallway, and the lights are swinging and flickering, and there's concrete walls, and they put us in this room, and it looked like an interrogation room. It had a square table, and they brought in another guy, and he goes, we need to count the money. So we counted out every bill on the table, and then the guy standing in the corner looks at the corporal, and he goes, are we going to confiscate the money?
Oh no.
And the corporal, he's like, no, they're fine. And we put the money back, and he filled out some paperwork for us and kind of helped us out.
Wow.
And he got me a car, and he goes, you need an escort? I'm like, well, nobody knows I have this money, do they? And he goes, no. I said, okay, we should be fine.
Yeah.
And so we made it to where we were going. And he's like, hey, call me when you're leaving, and I'll meet you at the airport. So I called him, I said, hey, we're leaving, heading to the airport. And he met us there when we were leaving, and escorted us all the way to the plane, stopped everybody in line at the TSA. A lady was getting ready to put her shoes on the conveyor, and he goes, ma'am, step back. And that's not what I wanted to do, but
I wonder if it's just that it's good for tourism.
I don't know. Yeah. And it may be. And
to not have a bad situation.
So that was that story. And we ended up going back to this place 2 weeks later. But so we're on our honeymoon, and we're having a great time, and the room and everything's free from a casino. And one perk of joining the team was you find out about other advantage plays other than blackjack. And I had been, shown stuff to look out for, and I ended up finding a machine. And they're in the U.S., but they'd all in the U.S. had been fixed and kind of burned down.
There's a glitch in the machine.
A glitch in the machine. They hadn't fixed the glitch. Yeah, you can get basically up to a 2% advantage just playing basic strategy.
Which is killer. 2% advantage just playing basic strategy.
Just playing basic strategy.
Sit there and grind it out.
Yeah, so I took video and sent it to the team, and I'm like, hey, here's this machine. And they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah. So when my wife would go to bed, I would go sit on this machine for 4 hours a night. And so I think you could,
which is why you're overtime, because you are grinding day and night.
I never stop. And so I was only playing $300 a hand because I was still kind of testing the machine out and kind of getting all the quirks worked out before the team eventually flew in and demolished it. But I was down $10,000 and like banging my head because other people would come and sit down and slow the game down. Like they would be talking and chatting and not even paying attention. I'm like, it's your turn. Like, hurry up. Like I needed everybody there so we could lock down every spot. But I lost $10,000. And on the last night I played until almost sunrise and won it all back plus $100. But I generated a ton of EV. And the good thing was we had spent the trip was free as far as the room and everything, but I had played so much time, and they saw it as $300 a spin on a slot machine, I think, because I walked up to like the host deal and I'm like, hey, can I get any of my room charges covered? And she goes, let me see your card. And then she swiped it and her eyes like got big. And she goes, I can cover 100% of your room charges. And we, had, I don't know, almost $2,000 just food and excursions and stuff like that, and covered all that. And then I've gotten we've gone back for free with like show up and we'll hand you $1,000 cash and stuff like that. So so the team came down a few days later after I had left, and they took it for about $50,000 in 3 days.
Yes. Love
I
it.
wasn't there for that, unfortunately, because we were headed back.
Yeah.
And but they smashed it and then got out of there. And then we planned a trip back 2 weeks later. And I took a whole month off from work. I didn't have any more vacation days, but I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to go back and we booked a trip for 10 days. I'm like, man, we can make $200,000, right?
Yeah.
And so we went back and the machine had been fixed.
So why did they leave after 3 days? It just had to be somewhere?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, they'd ran all the ATMs out of money, like cashing all the slot vouchers, and like they had to go cash one at a big like $10,000 voucher at the counter, and I don't know. They never asked me for my ID. Like I cashed out. Like when we went back, we played at another casino down there, and I cashed out like $20-some thousand, and they never even asked for my ID. So, but I don't know why they left. I guess I'd have to ask Levi, Mitch, and the guys, but.
So, so that the team, you were part of it for a couple of years, and then it just kind of disbanded.
Yeah. So Spartan and Levi, Mitch, it was 2018. I only played 80 hours. I was really busy at work and super stressed out, and I was doing a job for building a couple buildings for a major corporation, and there was a lot going on, and I was busy, and it was that everybody else on the team was kind of the same way, like. Nobody was really playing a lot of hours. Everybody had a bunch of cash tied up in the team as team bankroll. They couldn't use it for other things. They were doing other advantage plays, and it just kind of like
it was like you guys didn't need the team.
No,
you had the networking. You all had enough money to play on your own, and you lose the motivation.
It just kind of dissolved. Yeah. And so it's like everybody has enough to bankroll themselves. Like the only reason we were a team, I guess, early on was to have a bigger bankroll.
Yeah.
And it just fizzled out, and that's fine with me. Like everybody's on good terms. There was nothing negative from it, but now I've been on my own for this last year. And when I was on the team, like I just almost never lost. Like I had one short session where I dumped. I had my biggest loss ever, which was 18,000 betting 2x800, which was pretty mild as far as bad as it could have been, but. I won way more than I lost on the team, but then as soon as I broke out back out on my own, I lost for my first 140 hours, lost almost half my bankroll.
Wow.
With one. Well, so I didn't take all the money. Like I started out with a pretty modest bankroll because I had put the other money aside for some other things. Like this is enough to start with, and I didn't have to put any more money in it. But I lost almost half my bankroll. But then I dug out of it. 140-hour losing streak, and now I've doubled my bankroll this year.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So you've done solo and then team and solo. Like what do you prefer, or is it not
solo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can do whatever I want when I want, I guess, with my money, as far as like this play or that play, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Now that I'm used to the swings and like I know what I know, I don't know if I would ever. I've got some guys I might bankroll, but I don't think I would. I don't want to. I don't know. I don't see a need to team up anymore.
But because you've got a good network now,
Yeah.
so you don't need that camaraderie. I mean, you have the camaraderie without needing to be on the team, and you've got the bankroll without needing the team.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So, can I just ask you some of these questions?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I got some more stories I didn't tell, but we can do whatever.
No, let's hear them.
So this one, I guess, I don't know. I didn't have that many interesting back-offs. They were all super polite and nice. So I don't have like any great back-off stories except one. I was playing a casino that can't back you off, and like this guy just walked up and he was talking to he didn't even look like he worked there. And then I raised my bet and he turned around and told the dealer to shuffle. And so I acted like, after I raised my bet, so I acted like I didn't even see him or hear him. So I just left my bets out there while she shuffled and pretended to be watching TV. And then he turned back around and I lowered my bets, and then I started playing again, and then he did it again. And so I'm like, because sometimes if they don't know, if they just tell the dealer to shuffle, they're trying to see your reaction.
Yeah.
And so I've played through that before and played and ended up playing all night. But this wasn't the case. So I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. So after like the second or third time, I got up and got my chips, and I didn't even have that much in chips I was losing. I had a couple thousand, and I walked over to the cage, and I was standing in line for the cage, and they had a radio on the back counter. That's like a security radio or surveillance or whatever. And they're like, hey, the guy in the trucker hat, get his ID. And so I heard him. I'm like, well, this will be fun. So
Yeah.
I walked. Like, it's my turn to go to the cage, and I could see like this guy like playing linebacker, and I'm the running back, trying to see which way what hole I'm going to run in. So I run over there, and like before he gets there, I'm like, "Hey, do I need to show ID?" She goes, "How much do you have?" I said, $2,000. She said, "No." And so he got up and was like, "Sir, I need your ID." I said, "She just told me I didn't have to." And she had no idea. And so I was like, "I don't have it, and I'm not going to show you." And then I said, "You might want to turn your radio down." And he and he just hung his head and turned around and walked away.
And so she cashed you out?
Did
you just walk out?
Yeah.
No ID?
I can get pretty confrontational when not wanting to show my ID. I was playing a strip casino, and I was down 9,900, and because I was trying not to CTR.
Yeah.
And so I ended up walking out with almost 18,000, so I had a pretty big swing.
18,000?
Yeah. So I ended up making 7,000 or 8,000.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh crap, I don't want to show ID. And Spartan wasn't in town, so I couldn't like offload the chips. And so I went up to the cage. I was going to cash out less than 10,000 and come back later. And that's not always advisable. But
yeah.
Anyway, she goes, "Hey, I need you to see your ID." I said, "Oh, no, thank you." She goes, "No, I need to see it." I said, "No, I don't have it, blah, blah, blah." She goes, so she calls the pit or whatever. She goes, "Well, I know you have a lot more than this, and I'm not going to cash you out without showing your ID." So the manager of the casino comes up and he gives me his business card. I say, "Hey, I'm going to call my lawyer. I'm going to call gaming." I said, "You have to cash me out." He goes, "We're not going to cash you out." So I walked outside and I called gaming and talked to a senior gaming agent, and basically he said, I think there's some new statute or something. This was a couple years ago, but he said basically they can make you over 2,000 or 3,000. And I don't know if this is true, but this is what
in Vegas they can't, or in Nevada if it's over 3,000 they can say that they need ID.
So anyway, so then I fake called my lawyer, which I didn't do. So I went back in there and I was like, well, nobody's in town. I had a large portion of my cash was in chips. I didn't want to leave town with the chips, and I'm like, gosh dang it. So I bit the bullet. I was like, I didn't have any heat. I was drawing more attention to myself than I think I needed to. So I cashed out, gave my ID, and then I put my tail between my legs, and I went over to the pit and found the manager, and I apologized. I said, "Hey, I just don't like being told what to do," and just try to act like a rich person or kid or whatever. And I said, "Hey, can I get rated for my last 8 hours?" And he said, "Sure." I said, "Were you checking my play?" So I turned that, and I'd already given my ID, so what's the harm? Yeah. And so that turned into like a year's worth of, every time I came to Vegas, like free rooms, and like, a year later I came and my wife and I went and ate dinner there, $200 dinner there with Hit a Seven and his wife. Yeah. And I mean, I've just, every time I'm in town and they're not coming anymore, but just from that one session, and so I could have just walked out the door and left. And I'm like, I'll see what else I can get out of it. And,
at that point, they know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't back you off. No. So what's the harm in just seeing if you can get the comps out of it?
Right. Yeah. And I did.
Love it.
Another story was after that other country, I took the whole month off. So when Levi Mitch flew back, I went and picked him up at an airport, and we went on a 2-week trip. And so I don't get to do this because I have a job, so I'm excited. So we go all the way across the country for me. But we went up to a casino, and we're playing in the same casino. This is like 10 hours from my house. And he's playing at a table right by the podium, and I'm like 5 tables down playing, betting up to 2x500. Well, the pit boss gets on the phone and starts talking about me, and Levi Mitch can hear everything he's saying. So Levi Mitch is texting me everything that they're saying about me, and they're like, I think we got a card counter on such and such table. He's going 2x50, 2x50, and they'll bet 500. And he's like, okay, we're going to watch him, And so now I know they're watching me. And if you know they're watching you, you can throw them off.
Yeah.
So I played a couple dummy shoes, like break even, nothing crazy.
Yeah.
And then ended up playing the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I've told this story before. Like that's as long as you know the cost.
Yes.
There's very little risk in that. I think I've told the story before that Dusty Pink Chip was on a trip, and it was the same thing where he heard them saying like, hey, watch him. We think he's counting cards. So he calls me. He says, hey, can I basically flat bet a few shoes? And he said, I'll pay the cost in EV. And I said, sure, why not? So he plays a couple shoes flat betting like 2x200 or something like that. And then they're like, nope, he's not a card guy. He plays all night.
Yeah. If you know, I'm not saying every time the phone rings, run, but if you happen to know what they're talking about, in that instance, it was very beneficial.
I might bring it up at the boot camp this weekend. I just overheard on Gambling with an Edge, a guy, I feel bad I can't remember his name, but it was a recent one, and he was saying that when he knows that they're watching him, he'll do something like if he's betting $100, he'll double a 12 against a 2 or a 3. He'll double for $5.
Double for less.
He'll double because one, they have to call it out. Doubling a hard 12. It's he said that in his opinion, like the cost of doubling $5,
he's only going to hit it once anyway.
You're only going to hit it once anyway. Right. And when he's paying $100 and doubling for $5, it's whatever. Yeah. Even let's say he's throwing the entire $5 away.
Yeah.
Well, he's throwing $5 away for something that looks like the dumbest move. And he said that it can throw off some of the software where they're entering in the plays. You put in doubling because what he was saying is the software doesn't know if he's doubling the full amount or just doubling for $5. Anyway, I thought that was really smart and creative way to say, hey, I'm going to cost myself $5 or whatever.
Yeah.
And potentially throw them off.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one time I did win in Vegas. SD1 and I went out and played, and I'd drop him off down the block and go park, and we'd go into the same casino. We were sharing a car, and we were playing a couple tables apart, but we went to both go cash out at the same time. And I had $6,000 or $7,000, and I think he had $6,000 or $7,000, about the same. And I just totally refused to show my ID, and she shrugged her shoulders and cashed me out. And then he had a totally, completely different experience, and they did the same thing that happened to me at the other property. So I don't know. Sometimes it might be worth just saying no and see what happens. And don't just give it up on the first try.
That's right. That's right. So one of the questions that someone asked, this is Gary on the forum, wanted to know how long did it take earlier in your career before you really felt confident at the tables?
That's a good question. I think it was, so probably, I would say 200 hours. And it was after I met Levi Mitch and he dealt to me. That's when I started kind of getting used to the swings. I was playing with appropriate risk. And I feel like I just felt the flow of the game. And something I didn't mention, in my area I had ran into another card counter, and this was before I joined the team, and we started practicing together once a week. And he learned only from reading books. And and then so he had a little bit different style, and we dealt to each other, and he was a good player. And as soon as I started dealing to him, and also a guy from work about my age, we started writing together every morning. So we would quiz each other on basic strategy and deviations. I forgot to say that earlier. And so I was kind of teaching him, and the other guy and I were working together, and we'd all three meet once a week after I got off work. And so when I started dealing to somebody else is when I feel like I really learned it. I'm like,
good.
First off, I need to know what I'm doing in order to, teach this person, or I don't want to look dumb in front of this other card counter. It's like I need to know. And so I feel like teaching somebody else is what really kind of ingrained it in me.
Okay. And it was around that 200 hours also that you started to feel comfortable with just the variance.
Yeah,
of the game.
just the flow of the game, like just the flow of the table, like interacting with dealers and pit bosses and ploppies, like getting mad. You just kind of.
So to clarify, when you say flow of the game, you don't mean like there's this magical flow of the cards, but more that to play perfectly while also acting natural.
Conversation.
Yeah.
Waitress comes by, questions, everybody's high five, just kind of like, I don't know how to act, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings me to another question. Ping pong was saying, it's really amazing. You and JC Rocks 111 to win large amounts, here in 2000, whatever, 17, 18, 19, from a single casino. Are there certain things that you did to not look like a counter while counting?
Yes. So the company I work for, I drive a company vehicle, and it's a pretty large company, and they've got offices all across the U.S. And so, especially in my area, and a lot of the areas that I'm still playing, a lot of the people that are at my company gamble.
Yeah.
And so I have a good excuse to be almost anywhere. I'm working on a job, and I've got a good story, and I roll up in the company vehicle, and I'm wearing, most of the time the company apparel, and I just try to blend in. I usually drink a couple beers and try to look just normal and hang out and there to have fun and talk it up with the pit boss. I try to make the first conversation with them, and I just try to, because a lot of times if they like you, they may turn the other way if they suspect something. And sometimes it comes from surveillance, but sometimes surveillance doesn't watch you until, the pit boss might call and say, hey, he's betting a certain amount, watch him, or so on and so forth. But on the team, if you tipped, it was out of your own pocket. And so I'm like, I'm not going to tip. That's dumb. And so I never tipped. But after I at this one casino, I played so many hours, and there was one dealer who's now a pit boss that was like, kind of like, hey, I know what you're doing. So the count would, I don't know, I'd be playing heads up. So the count would go negative 5, 6, 7, and then a bunch of small cards would come out. It might be to 0, or I'm -1, or, running -1, and he'll be like, oh, wink, wink, bunch of small cards. Here comes the big bets. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just not feeling it. And so he thinks it's a high count. And he's like, oh, why aren't you raising your bets? He goes, I think you're good. But he says, I don't think you're that good. So, but so like, I don't know. So if I think a dealer's onto me, and I think I'm really good at creating better conditions, getting dealers to cut thinner.
Yeah.
Like knowing which dealers to try to get to cut thinner and which ones to not ask to try to get to cut thinner. Like the more experienced dealers, obviously you usually don't.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they know why. But if you have a newer dealer that's kind of unsure, like I've gotten quarter deck pin and stuff.
Yeah.
So we kind of got off topic.
So do you tip now?
No, only at this one casino.
Okay. And how do you calculate how much to tip? You follow your heart.
I know. So no, I keep track of how much I tip. And honestly, like I feel like they don't think I'm tipping enough. So
it says
it never
any service industry person ever.
And so and one of the dealers alluded to it actually last week, and I said, you don't think I'm tipping enough? I said, then I'll just stop tipping. It's like I don't have to. But it started with that one dealer. I don't know, because he might be next in line for table games manager, and I think he knows what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And he's hoping that maybe the other table games manager gets the axe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
well, I've never heard a dealer tell me I'm tipping too much.
No. And I base how I play based on where I'm at. Like if I'm playing one of the few casinos that I can drive to on the weekend, I'm going to play a little differently than if I fly somewhere and I'm only going to be there for a few days.
Yep.
Like Vegas, I'll play 10, 15, 30-minute top sessions or until I expose my max bets. Because usually if you start out green and you go 2x, 3, 4, 500. It's pretty quick in Vegas. So, but I think if you get out of there and just go to the next place, then they'll just kind of write you off and don't go back there. But like if I'm in SoCal and casinos are 20, 30 minutes or an hour apart, I'm going to play a little longer and but still play hard because I know I'm not going to be back there for 6 months or a year or longer. So I know they'll forget about me, and I play unrated and all that stuff. So, and a rental car. And
so next question comes from JC Rocks. He wants to know how the comps and heat and benefits, everything held up with top tier status.
Oh man.
After all the dust settled.
So that's what I was worried about, because I know other APs that have gotten their card deactivated at, not that property, but one of the other properties. And so, I had gotten a lot of comps like airfare, hotels, like flat screen TVs, Dyson vacuums, Yeti coolers.
Oh my gosh.
7-day cruise. This is all from the casino that I took. So I probably took an additional $40,000 or $50,000 from just comps and trips and airfare and rental car reimbursements and cruises and stuff from this same casino that I achieved the top tier status at. So at this particular casino, they kept coming in. And so the next year I dropped down one tier, but I was still getting the free rooms. And I think I had close to $3,000 in points on my card that could spend like cash on property that I built up from playing. So like that lasted almost 2 years. So I was still getting like free rooms, but I was just using the points for like food and stuff on properties. Like I flew my dad to Vegas, for a trip, and we stayed, and limo pickup, and the suite, and the lounge and all that stuff. And so they're starting to dry up now.
Okay. Well, so I can imagine people listening and being like, what the hell? I'm not getting those. You know what? Most of that stuff I never got either, but it can happen.
It can happen. So I almost never play rated unless I have very, 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 very good intel from other APs that are like, hey, like, it's okay to play rated here. This place doesn't database, or this place doesn't flyer, or this place gives $6,000 a month in free bets. So, there's some casinos you can, but it's based off of good intel and not just like, oh, I'm going to play rated here. And a lot of the casinos around where I live or live close to, you have to play rated some places to avoid an ante.
Okay.
And so
it's worth it at those places.
At some of these places, and I've developed. There's a chain of casinos that I've developed like a persona as kind of a big player, and so I go. They have three or four. I don't know. They have multiple properties, and so I feel like I went to a new one actually a few weeks ago, and I feel they didn't know who I was, but again, like my company's the one I work for is around that area, and I feel like they swiped my card and they're like, well, he plays big at our other properties, so they got me a room, all this stuff. And so I've kind of got something going with my local places. Like, hey, this guy is, well, the ones I can still play at, but I'm slowly getting further and further away.
Yeah.
But
so that brings me to my next question from Joe748, who wants to know, what are your reasons that you haven't gone full time?
I would say because I just got married, and I don't know, the stability. If I was single, I probably would have quit my job and just hit the road, and who knows? I don't know that. I don't know. Just the stability, the insurance, like the company vehicle.
It seems like it's working for you.
It's working out. I'm actually working on maybe a career change that might happen here in, I don't know, 2 to 3 years.
You're going to start a pie gow team?
Start a pie gow. Actually, no. But it would give me a few more, I think, months off during the year and give me more time. Because I don't think, I think I'm always going to do something advantage play related. I just don't see it leaving. It's become too big a part of my life.
And if you did it full time, maybe you'd burn out at it. And
that's
right
exactly
now you're enjoying
Yeah, if I'd played my first 2 or 3 years, if I'd played 3,000 hours or 4,000 hours, maybe I wouldn't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
But I played 2017. I don't know. I probably played 400 hours, and then 2018 I only played 80 hours, and then this year I played like 300. So yeah, it puts me I'm at 800 hours right now.
So the team dissolving really kind of lit a fire again.
Yeah, it's like, man, I'm going to get back out there and do this. And that job that I was super stressed out about was kind of ending.
Oh yeah, that's
I was super busy at work, and that and then it was like slowing down, and then I had more free time, and then it just started. I kicked it back up again on my own bankroll, I actually had let my BJA membership go dead for a few months, and then the team kind of disbanded, and then I rejoined BJA, got back on the forum, and it kind of just like rejuvenated me. So then I went back to all the posts that I'd missed and started kind of catching up on the forum, see what was going on. And I enjoy what I do, but it's just very time consuming. So who knows what the future holds. If I can find something else I enjoy to do that has like, because I plan on having kids one day and want to have like a, stable career that, insurance and, a steady paycheck, because we're just living off what we make from work, and my Blackjack bankroll is still like I use like pull out travel expenses and stuff from it, but other than that, I don't hardly ever touch it. So
yeah. So here's a question from You Lose again. It's like a play on pocket aces.
Okay.
You lose again. Because pocket aces are the best poker hand in Hold'em, but it doesn't always win. So basically, I'm gonna paraphrase and change his question a little bit to what I want to ask, which is how much of your advantage play is blackjack, and how much is other advantage plays?
So time wise, spent probably it's the majority of it's blackjack, but there's. So, like, if I have a negative shoe, I might get up and do some other advantage plays. I can't say too much about.
Because you're chasing your money?
Yes, because I'm chasing, and I think it looks good a lot of times, too.
I think that probably does.
And so, like, it's a negative shoe. Somebody else is going to burn it out. I might go blow some steam and do some other advantage plays around the casino. But I'd say the majority of it's blackjack. But, if I show up to a casino, and I'll look for all kinds of opportunities while I'm there. I used to just beeline straight to the blackjack table. Yeah. But now I'll like check some dealers out or check out other games or kind of scout the entire casino. Because, if you just focus on like one thing, then there's a lot of EV around the casino that you may not know about.
But the majority of it's still blackjack.
Yeah. The majority of my money is, blackjack. So
cool. Speaking of money, Levi Mitch said that you're actually pretty good with managing your money. He said you use Dave Ramsey.
Oh, yes. Financial Peace University.
Yeah. Did you used to be in debt?
Yeah. So I took out loans to go to college. When I graduated, my senior year of college, my dad got me Financial Peace University. And that's, other than my house, that was my own. Oh, I had a truck, but I sold that. And other than that, that was my only debt. So, but it wasn't even that much. It was like $25,000. So like got rid of that. And, so just as far as like just living on less than you make and like spending your money on paper before it comes in, like doing a budget and all that stuff and saving and investing and
So do you do envelope system?
I used to do envelope system. I use the every dollar app now. Now we're Dave Ramsey's sponsor.
I don't know.
It's Dave Ramsey's.
This podcast is brought to you
by Dave Ramsey. Oh no, it's his app that links to your bank, and
right on.
So, but I use cash for a lot of things, but I can input those into the software deal.
Yeah,
so I used to use envelopes.
So, I don't think I've ever talked about this. We have a budget. There've been like some times where we haven't, but we do. I think for kind of like alignment. What I mean is like so that we can actually see if we're spending our money on the things that we say that we care about. Because if what we say we care about is, whatever, generous giving and family and investing, but then we're like spending our money on taco trucks. Or, I don't know. You can't spend a lot of money on taco trucks. Right. But if we're spending it on something that isn't what we say we care about, then we're not being very smart with our money. Yeah. So my wife kind of does envelope-ish thing. Like we have a budget that we agree on, and then And then whatever we track it.
Exactly.
I don't use Dave Ramsey's app. I didn't know it existed,
Yeah.
but we track it all and make sure that we're spending on the things that we say that we
do the same thing. But yeah, it's like doing a budget is like giving yourself permission to spend, as long as you agreed, hey, this is what I'm going to spend. And I feel like if you don't do a budget, like at the end of the month, you're just like wondering where your money went because you don't know. You didn't tell it where to go. So like,
yes,
I don't know. I think it's very important because like if you have your finances in order and like, obviously the lower your living expenses are, the easier, it is to, if you want to go full time, it's easier to do. Like if you have to generate less EV to live, then that's more money for your Blackjack bankroll. But
well, and some people are spenders, some people are savers. And when you have a marriage where you got a spender and a saver,
I'm definitely the saver.
It can, so a budget is like a great conversation starter, to say like, hey, well, what are the things we care about?
Exactly.
And okay, if we care about these things, how do we get on the same page? Because, there are times in our marriage where I would have just not spent on anything because I get excited about, saving and like building, whatever wealth or whatever you want to call it. But that's not really intrinsically any more valuable than spending, and so it creates a great conversation just having a budget.
That's funny that Levi Mitch would say that. I'm like the tightest person, like as far as spending money. And like we'd go on a trip and Levi Mitch would be like, oh, let's go rent those jet skis. Then he'd take his shirt off and roll up his jeans and go jump on the jet. Like we'd just be driving by like Lake Michigan or something. And
he'd just go.
He was always looking for something fun to do. And I needed that because I would be like, oh, I can't afford, the sunflower seeds are an extra nickel or something on my salad. I, just trying to cut every corner. And he's like, nah, it's okay. Well, Well, it was a good balance. Like he helped like, hey, like you can have fun too.
And when you have that kind of financial alignment, then you actually can you can feel free to spend money when it's aligned with like what you care about, you know? Because it's stupid to spend money and the next day be like, why did I do that? But it could actually, you don't want to like get to the end of your life and be like, why did I save all that?
Exactly. I've got all this money, but I never lived or had any fun. So
there's
a good balance. I think you got to talk to yourself or your spouse, or you've got to have goals, and you got to always be working towards goals, whether they're short term or long term or both. Write them down, and you'll be surprised. I think about how your life will change.
Right on. Yeah. Well, it's funny. Earlier you were saying you got to start with why. I think I'm not a huge Dave Ramsey fan. I'm not like against him, but there's actually quite a few studies that show that a lot of people that go through financial peace, like a year later, they're in debt again. And that happened with my grandparents. They were like crazy debt. They went through that. They got out of debt, and like 2 or 3 years later, they're in crazy credit card debt again because they didn't have a why bigger than getting out of debt.
Right.
And so they got out of debt and then had no like actual like a why to put their money towards, and then they just bought a bunch of crap again.
Yeah, debt is emotional, so you got to like have a purpose, or you'll just, it's not a math thing, it's an emotion thing. So.
All right, so this is really getting off of advanced play, but whatever.
I think it's relevant.
It's Levi Mitch's fault.
Yeah.
And then you get me fired up about talking about financial alignment, and I'll just keep going. So one other question I've got is from Nubs, and he wanted to know any mistakes or errors that you've found in your game or that you've learned from over the years.
Man, I thought about that question the whole way here, and I was like, what am I going to say? Because I feel like I didn't play like any bad games or bad pin or accidentally play 6-5 or a CSM. I don't know if it's because I did a lot of research. Like there was things I didn't know, like, and this is kind of embarrassing, but like when I first got to Vegas, the first time I got to Vegas and I was hanging out with Levi Mitch and playing on my own, I was playing a double deck table and it was a positive count, and these two people came to sit down, and there was mid-shoe entry in the double deck. And I said, hey, do you guys mind waiting? We literally had like 2 or 3 hands left. I said, hey, do you guys mind waiting? I got my max bets out. I was like 2x50 or about 2x50 at that time. And they just ignored me. I don't know if they spoke English. Sat down and started playing. And I got so mad. I didn't say anything. I got so mad that I just sat out.
Oh, wow.
In a positive shoe. And I guess at that time I didn't understand, like, obviously they have no effect on the game other than slowing it down.
Yeah, they're eating
it's
up
still
some
a positive
cards.
shoe.
Yeah.
And I told Levi Mitch, and he goes, what? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, after I thought about it, I'm like, that was stupid.
Yeah.
But like, I overbet my bankroll in the beginning. And And I guess I knew I was overbetting it, but if I knew what I knew now, like that was like scary.
Well, and to be honest, it worked out for you.
Yeah.
But then I wonder for every overtime that overbet their bankroll in the beginning and it worked out, there could be 1 or 2 or 3 that it didn't work out, right. Which from my perspective, running Blackjack Apprenticeship, that would be a bummer. So I'm really glad it worked out for you. It worked out for me too, right. Overbetting. But for those listening, don't just say, "Oh, I'll overbet and then I'll correct it later," because you might not withstand it and have the opportunity to correct it later.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Thanks for sharing some of those. You have any other stories you want to share with us?
It's kind of a funny story. So our team, I only did spotter BP one time with Spartan, and I was the BP, and he was the spotter. And we did it after we flew to that other country and that machine was fixed. And we were playing at another casino where they had a quarter deck, double deck game, but they also had a really good shoe game. So but it was a huge casino, and I don't know, they had 20 or 30 tables. I can't remember. But we were like the only 2 people in the entire casino.
Wow.
It was like off season or something.
In a huge casino?
Yeah, big casino. I mean, I'm not going to say where it's at, but so he's my spotter and I'm the BP. So I'm like fake playing a slot machine, like waiting for him to call me in.
Yeah.
And so we just like, we practiced it a little bit, like how we were going to pass the count and what the call-in signal was going to be. And so the first shoe he called me into, there was so few cards left. It was a pretty good. There was maybe a deck and a half left to play. They were cutting off less than a deck out of the shoe, and he called me in. And it was calling for like 2 by 800 bets. And so, I get so excited. My first call in. Well, he's like coloring up to leave, and I'm going to finish the shoe, so I get all the cards.
Yeah.
And so I get my bets out there, and she starts to pull the cards out of the shoe to shuffle. And I said, no, stop. Wait, what are you doing? She goes, what? You don't want a new shoe? I said, no, I'll just finish this one. Like nonchalant. She goes, what? You don't? And I'm like, no. She goes, so she calls the pit boss over, and she's like, he wants to finish out this shoe. But like they couldn't understand like why I just come in with a deck left and want to finish the shoe. And she just shrugged her shoulders to let him finish.
Awesome.
It was just like,
that's funny.
It was funny.
Was he gone by the time?
Yeah, he had already walked away.
So
then I was like, hey, we can't, like, you got to, like, at least.
Yeah.
So the next time, next time he just went to the bathroom and left his chips at the table.
Yeah, or even just play a hand.
Yeah, play one hand
with you.
Right.
That's funny.
But yeah, after we figured out they were going to try to do that.
Man, those things were think on the fly because no. You never know exactly
it was funny.
What you're going to do in that moment. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story from $200 from getting 2 buddies to chip in on a $29 membership back in the day to now. You told me before. Can I share?
Yeah.
That you cracked the $250,000 mark.
233,000.
Oh, almost got the quarter million dollar. 233,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
You didn't crack
I said that wrong. Yes. I'm at 233,000.
Okay. Well, then come back when you've won another 17,000. No,
I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah. That sounds good. No, that's awesome, and it's for me. It's incredibly exciting and meaningful that to see people, not just anybody, but like cool, honest, hardworking people continue to just crush the casinos and use it in a way that's aligned with for their families and their lives.
And I couldn't have teamed up with better guys. And I didn't know it at the time. I was just so willing to join a team, but they really, really are honest and hardworking. And Levi, Mitch, and Spartan are like not completely different people, but like they complement each other well. And I think all 3 of us, we worked well together as a team. And it was just so much fun.
Awesome.
Seems like it was just yesterday.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to do this again in another year or 2 when you've got some more stories and you've beaten a few more casinos for upwards of 6 figures.
Let's do it.
Awesome. That's it. And if you want to find out more, go to blackjackapprenticeship.com. If you want to ask Overtime some questions on the forum, I'm sure he'd be kind enough to do that for you guys. And check out Financial Peace University. No, just kidding. All right. Bye.